Hello, hello. Welcome to this P01 tutorial. We're going to have a look at how to do the pivot pin for assignment 1. Let's jump across to our drawing and have a look at it. That was Alt-Tab. I use there to jump between windows, a very useful little hotkey. P01, pivot pin. We've got this sort of revolved looking section around the bottom. We can see that there. Into more of this hourglass shape. We're going to do that with a loft. And then we got this little top on it, which we'll do with a dome. So let's jump in. I'm going to move through the videos quite quickly with the assumption that you can pause and stop and do whatever you need to do to make sure that you personally can keep up as we're going. I'll just mention we've got this ellipse shape here. That will be at this point and this point. And we're going to merge those into each other using a loft. That'll all make a bit more sense as we get into it. And they have to be at 90 degrees to each other, however they're the same dimension. So let's come across to SolidWorks, Alt-Tab again, brings me across, and I'll create a new part file. I'm going to save this as P01. Control-S brings up that save dialog box. I'll put in P01, hit save. I'll overwrite that other one, that was just something else we're working on in class. And I will call this the description. And that description is pivot pin. If you're not sure how we got to there, just remember to get the custom properties information. We need to click on it up the top here. Okay, so we can see just here is the file properties where we entered that. So I'm going to come to my front plane and start a sketch just by right-clicking it. And I'm going to draw that little revolved section first because that looks like a nice, simple and solid base to start our model from. So here we go, we're jumping in, we've done our center line. The purpose of that center line is so when we do our revolve feature, that's got something nice and easy to find that it can use as the center of revolution for that feature. And we're just going to draw something a bit like that. And we'll chuck some dimensions on this to clean it up. The first one I'm going to do is about 20 mils between those 2 points. And that's because if we go back to that drawing, I'm pretty sure that point is just a little bit wider than the top section, which we know is 18 mils because there's that ellipse running through it. So let's set that to 20. We know that this is 10 because we actually get given the direct dimension for that. So let's chuck a 10 across here. And then that same drawing showed us that this section here, I'm just going to click off into white space because that center line was still selected, and we can see now that's behaving how we wanted. So I'll put a 5mm there, a 5mm here. I reckon that last one looked just a little bit smaller. I might chuck a 4mm on that. And I can see that's all sort of drooping a bit low. I want to put my angle on there, which I know is 45. And finally, we're going to draw just that little, basin shape on the bottom there. So, 45 degrees on that section. And I'm just going to drag this up so I've got some room there for that basin. And I'll use a 3-point arc to draw that shape. Something like this. Now I want to make sure that this is going to run tangent down the bottom here. The easiest way to do that is to grab the arc center point, which I can tell is the center point because the arc is influenced when I drag and move that. And I'm going to lock that center point to this vertical line. Now if we look at the way that behaves, it always stays nice and tangent at the bottom. I think the arc is going to be something like that, so I'll just sort of visually gauge that, and I want to put a radius dimension on there. And let's call it 20 just to round up to a nice clean number. Alright, go to features and revolve that. We drew the sketch pretty well, so it doesn't need more input. We can just hit tick straight away because it's found its center line and it's found its profile, and it guesses what we're trying to do with all of that info. Now, onto our loft. We're going to begin by drawing 2 offset surfaces so that we have something to draw these ellipses on, and then we will loft between them. So, reference, geometry, plane. We'll start by creating a plane 2mm off that surface, then we'll create another plane which is 15mm off that one. Hit 15, hit tick, very good. So now we've got 2 planes and we want to draw 2 ellipses at 90 degrees to each other. We'll begin on plane 1, and we'll draw a little vertical sort of positioned lip, a radius. And I'll just drop that in. I use the ellipse tool, that's this one here, to drop that. And now I've got to put some dimensions on it. We could see from that drawing that it is 12 millimeters across and 18 millimeters tall. So we'll pump those on first. And we can see we got some underdefined geometry there. So let's click and drag, see what's happening. It's spinning. The simplest way I know to prevent that spinning is to select the top and bottom points. We'll just make sure you select the point and not the line there. We'll grab those points, and we're going to put a vertical relation between those. And now we're going to repeat all that, but you know, at 90 degrees, perpendicular to that, on the plane above. So save and exit your sketch, right-click plane 2, select a sketch on it. I'm going to come back into my top view so I can see what I'm drawing, and I will draw another ellipse. This time at about 90 degrees to that. So, same as last time, let's begin by putting some dimensions, 12 and 18, across this shape. So we'll make that 12, we'll make these 18, and we can see already that's starting to twist, so we know how to lock that out. We could either use the same vertical between the top and bottom, or this time we will use the left and right, and we can place a horizontal. They're going to have the same effect. It doesn't really matter which one you choose. And we'll hit save and exit from that sketch. We're going to now use our Loft Boss Base feature, and this will knit these profiles together, not unlike a boat hull or a fuselage. If you imagine how they're made, you have profiles, and then you place a skin around those profiles. So let's select our 3 profiles. We have 1. We have 2, and we have 3. Now it's very important we select these in order. If we don't, it can do some pretty strange stuff. Now we've got a first issue here, and that is that we have very sharp edges, top and bottom, when on this part we can see they're really quite nice and they're free-flowing, you know, beautiful sort of hourglass shape there. So let's adjust the start and end constraint using this feature here, and we're going to set both of those to normal to profile. And that just means they start sort of perpendicular to that face. Normal is like a more 3D definition of perpendicular when we're talking about SolidWorks. Now I can see I've got an issue in that it's twisting a bit. You know, that's not really very clean lofting. And I can control that with these control points. We can see if I start to drag those, it has a pretty big effect on the nature of that curve. And I want to try get these all nice, straight, and in line, so that I get a nice, straight and in line, no twisting curve. So to just check how close they are, I'm going to come into my top view, and I'm going to try line it up with those endpoints, which we can see here, in my ellipse. So I'll drop that one there. I'll bring this one down to that endpoint, somewhere about there. And this is actually looking pretty good. It looks like I got a bit of room to tweak it. We'll just zoom in so we can really see what we're doing. Drop it about there. Look, I think that's going to be about as good as we can get, so let's just leave it there. And now we can see we got rid of almost all of that twisting. It's looking a lot more symmetrical and even now, so that's quite excellent. Let's close and save that feature. I'm pretty happy about that loft. I think we're going to struggle to do better than that. Now, we want to dome the top. That is under Insert, Features, and Dome. Under parameters, we just select the top face, and we can see already it's doming, but it looks pretty terrible. It looks like it's wearing a hairnet or something. We want to change the definition of our loft to clean that up. The first thing we're going to do is hit elliptical dome. That tells it that we don't need it to be completely even the whole way. It can sort of ellipse itself, and that allows it to sit at tangency to those surfaces, which is nice. And then we want to probably bring that down to 9 millimeters so that it's half of our major width. And that should make it look about as close as possible to a nice, even, spherical sort of shape because it's half its diameter. Hopefully that all makes sense. Now these planes are a bit in my way. I'm just going to select and hide those 2 planes by right-clicking them and selecting hide. Now I'm going to come and sketch in the front plane. I'm going to do a circle on it. No points for guessing what this is for. We are punching our hole through this thing now. So, let's draw that circle. I can tell the center of my circle locked off to that midpoint. A, because I was hovering over it, and I could see that before I started drawing it. And lastly, because this midpoint relation indicator has appeared telling me it exists, so that's nice. So let's put a dimension of about 10 millimeters on that, and use an extrude cut to cut through it. So I'll come around to my side view. Now I can see it's only going in one direction. I want to choose through all both. And we'll hit tick. We can see that that's now cutting through the whole thing. Finally, we just want to add this little fillet, so we soften the whole thing up. So let's grab fillet. Let's go for 1 mil. Let's select that inside portion. And we'll lock that in. That all looks pretty good. Look at that. Control S. And you're done. Move on to your next part. And very good.